Constraints, as the name suggests, are used to constrain or fully define our sketches. This is going to be a very important step within our design and sketching process. So let's take a look at a number of the constraints we have available to us and how we can use them. So when I'm creating any sketch, on the left-hand side there I can see a whole number of sketching tools, and many of these are constraints. So let's say I have just a simple line here. So if I tap and select that line, notice that by default this is unconstrained. I haven't thrown any constraints on this yet. So if I were to drag this line, I can see that it's, of course, unconstrained. It's free to move wherever I'd like. But in many cases, once we're finishing off our sketches, we want them to be fully defined or fully constrained, so we can't move these around, and in fact, they're kind of locked in or constrained. So the first one I might want to take a look at is the lock constraint. So if I just tap and select my line there, on the left-hand side, I see one option called lock. And you might notice as I've locked that in now, both endpoints of my line have turned black. And that's just indicating that they're locked in. So now if I were to try to drag this line, notice I'm unable to. That's because it's locked into place. Of course, I can also unlock this, so if I tap back on the line and just hit unlock. Now it's unlocked, the endpoints are no longer black, they've gone back to white, and I can tap and drag as this is going to be unconstrained. I can do the same with any sketch entity, so I can use the line as I just did, or any endpoints. So if I select my bottom endpoint there, I can lock just this specific endpoint in as well. On the left-hand side, I can tap lock, or you may notice just above my selection there, I have the little lock icon, and I can just tap on that. It's just a faster way to lock that point in. Again, I see that endpoint, my bottom endpoint has turned black now. That's indicating that it's locked in place. So now, if I select my top endpoint, and again, I'll just drag. So we can see that this line is not fully constrained, as it is still moving around, but you can see that my bottom point, which is locked in, is of course not moving, as it's been constrained. Another constraint that I use very frequently is the horizontal or vertical constraint. So this one, let's say I just have this line here, it's at some angle, and if I were just to tap on the horizontal vertical constraint, notice now it has jumped to be exactly vertical, and I also have this vertical constraint coming in as well. And I can move this line around, it's always going to be vertical. I can even select one of the endpoints and try to move that around, and see it's always staying to be a vertical line as I've applied this vertical constraint. If I ever want to delete or get rid of a constraint, I can just tap on the constraint itself, and you'll notice the X just above it is used to delete or get rid of that constraint. Now we can see the constraint has been removed, so this line is no longer constrained to be vertical, and I can see it can now be at any angle once more. The horizontal constraint works in just the same way. So if I select my line here, and how this works, if the line is closer to being vertical, it will throw in the vertical constraint, or if the line is closer to being horizontal, it will throw in that horizontal constraint. So in this case, my line is fairly horizontal, so I can throw in that horizontal constraint, and now again I can see my line is constrained to be horizontal. In the next lesson, we will learn our remaining constraints.